Tonight, Donald Trump is accused of blasphemy over an AI-generated image depicting him as Jesus. The US president posted, then deleted this picture after a rare rebuke from Christian leaders. This was his explanation.
Well, it wasn't depiction. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor.
That after a very public and acrimonious spat with the Pope, who's been critical of America's actions in Iran. So has he gone too far this time? Could this be the post that alienates his base? We'll discuss that tonight. Plus, as the US blockade on the Strait of Hormuz begins, we'll chart its effect on oil prices. In Lebanon, the emergency workers being maimed and killed by Israeli bombs will have a special report. And Hungary's new president and why his next move will be crucial to the war in Ukraine. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening from Beirut in Lebanon. I'm Yalda Hakim. Israel is continuing to bombard this country in violation of a ceasefire announced days ago. In their eyes, the rules of the truce don't apply here. And as emergency workers arrive at the scene of each airstrike, they too are being targeted. We'll have a special report from our special correspondent Alex Crawford and hear from the United Nations humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher coming up on the program. But today, the world's attention was on the narrow passageway which used to funnel 20% of global oil and gas every day. Donald Trump's naval blockade of Iranian port alongside the Strait of Hormuz has been in effect for 6 hours now, and he was quick to claim that cutting off the flow of Iranian oil had forced Tehran back to the negotiating table. Have a listen.
They're really blackmailing the world. We're not going to let that happen. We've been called by the other side. They'd like to make a deal very badly, very badly.
The inevitable result was, of course, another jump in oil prices and more strain for households around the world.
We're being hit hard with fuel surcharges in particular.
I'm worried because it affects my purse as well, because I spend more only before the war.
The best support they can do is to encourage countries to stop fighting each other.
The view there from Nottingham today as the US president tightened the screws on Tehran. But Donald Trump also faced fury and accusations of blasphemy from some of his most vocal supporters in the Christian right. Our US correspondent Mark Stone can explain why.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
He's a very liberal person.
I voted for him. I like him a lot, but there are times he's kind of going overboard.
Is he in trouble?
No, I don't think so.
I think before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
And what do they make of this?
I do support the president. I do not support what he just did there.
No, I never saw that before.
You sure that's not AI?
Yes, this is Trump as Jesus, an AI image posted by him, now deleted, by the way. I'm in Virginia at Holy Trinity, Gainesville. Beyond the Washington, D.C. bubble, Trump does well in communities like this, but then so too does religion.
Jesus said to him, Rabbi.
Monday midday mass is well attended in this huge suburban church. So what happens here when Trump compares himself to Jesus and takes on the Pope?
He posted the image of himself as Jesus.
Oh, well, that's a little over the top, I think. But yes.
But he still has your support for now.
Yes.
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin, no matter what. Because aside from this picture, this is the best president we've ever had, bar none.
And while we were talking, back in Washington, the president was backtracking.
They're all your favorites.
Sort of.
I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support.
As for the Pope, well, he had this.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel.
Finally then, why is the president lashing out at the Pope? Well, maybe because he hears him and he fears him. He can't remove him, he can't destroy him like he has so many of his opponents, his political opponents. The Pope is above all that. He's also an American. His voice resonates here far more.
There's nothing to apologize for. He's wrong.
But there's something else too, I think. Precisely because he's an American, Trump thinks he can more easily cast him as one of them, not one of us. And remember, 55% of American Catholics gave Trump their vote in 2024. They are watching this fight for sure.
Mark Stone reporting there. Well, let's bring in NBC's correspondent Claudio Lavanga, who's travelling with Pope Leo. Thank you very much, Claudio, for joining us here on the programme. You're travelling with the Pope. You're in Algeria. But, of course, while you were on that aircraft, you also managed to speak to him. Just give us a sense of his mood.
Well, that's right, Yalda. Well, that's one thing that happens when we travel with the Pope to international destinations like this one. Shortly after takeoff from Rome, we get the opportunity of speak to him one-to-one because he comes to the back of the plane to greet us individually. So it just so happens that the takeoff this morning literally took off. It just happened hours after Trump posted that really long and critical message on Pope Leo. So I had to ask him what he thought about that. Take a listen to what he answered.
I have no fear neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I mean. I am called to know what the church is called to do. We're not politicians. We're not trying to make foreign policies also with the same perspective that he might understand. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is a message of war.
And the other journalists also, of course, asked the same question to the Pope. And he basically said, well, Catholics around the world will just look at that post and draw their own conclusions. And they did draw their own conclusions because there was a lot of backlash and a lot of people, especially on social media, criticizing Trump and calling that image of him as a Jesus-like figure and that post on Pope Leo as blasphemous, Yalda.
Claudio, thank you so much, and quite an extraordinary exchange there with the Pope. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's go get more now on all of this and speak to former Italian Prime Minister, Senator Matteo Renzi, who joins me now live. Prime Minister, thanks so much for joining us here on the programme. There are a number of issues here that I want to discuss. First of all, your reaction to that post that Donald Trump has now deleted, virtually depicting himself as Jesus.
But that is a crazy. As a Christian, as a Catholic, I think that is blasphemous. But for everyone, also for the people not Christians, that is ridiculous. Is silly. Is a man who lost absolutely the brain. Why? You use religion for political issues. So absolutely no way. President Trump destroy his credibility with this stupid message.
Mr. Renzi, I also want to discuss the attack that he launched on Pope Leo. We heard there in our piece, and we spoke to the journalist who spoke to Pope Leo. But your reaction to some of the statements he's been making about the Pope?
For the message of Pope today is a good message. My message is gospel. That is the answer of Pope Leo. And if you think in the international framework, we have two American leaders. One is the hero of American dream, and that is Pope Leo from Chicago. And the other is American nightmare who break every type of relation, and that is President Trump. My opinion is that attack Vatican from a White House, it's not normal thing, and it's very strange. This is a political consideration, this is a political remark. Why the far right in Europe and around the world, who had a lot of Christians who vote for them, that don't decide to give an answer against Trump, and they continue to stay very prudent because the president of the United States is too big to be attacked. But I'm a free man. I think really attack Vatican from White House, it's the last thing really important, really we need today in the global disorder.
Yeah, and Mr. Renzi, we know that the relationship between the Italian Prime Minister Meloni and Donald Trump has been good in the past, and she, of course, was quite critical. Do you think that what she said was sufficient and enough?
Now, Giorgia Meloni is in difficulty times because, first of all, this is a political consideration. What Trump touched around the world became a problem. Look, the results in Canada some months ago, when in theory progressives have to lose, and thanks to support of Trump to the other part, Mark Carney became prime minister. The same happened in Australia with Anthony Albanese. 6 months before election, nobody believed in the polls in the victory of left. And thanks to the Trump attack, Anthony Albanese came back to be prime minister. And now, just 24 hours ago, what happened in Budapest, in Hungary, when J.D. Vance closed the electoral campaign of Prime Minister Orban and closed with a call with the President Trump. And what happened for the first time after 16 years, Viktor Orban lost an electoral campaign. What means? What Trump touched became a problem. And for Giorgia Meloni, she's a very intelligent woman. She's my rival. She's our prime minister. But of course, we are at the opposition. I have to recognize she's intelligent. And she knows very well the relation with Trump became a problem for all the European leaders in the right. What Trump touched became a disaster.
And Mr. Renzi, you said that the Christian right, the leaders across Europe, are not coming out and condemning Donald Trump's words, whether it's attacking the Pope, whether it's depicting himself as Jesus. They're not saying enough. But do you think that their bases in the United States, across Europe, who have looked at Donald Trump favorably and have supported him in the past, will now distance themselves because of that language?
First of all, Donald Trump used a fake news today when he explained that Pope Leo was elected thanks to me. That is not true. The conclave is a very complicated thing, but there is no one evidence Donald Trump supported the Pope Leo. This is the first. Why I use this expression? Because of course, in the narrative of far right, particularly in Europe, but also in the MAGA world in the United States, the idea was Pope Francis was too leftist. Now, with Pope Prevost, with the brother who believe in the MAGA, we will have a Vatican. What happened now? There is a break, not caused by the Pope. The Pope today is in Rabat, is in Algeria, is in the place of St. Augustine, is the father of his experience. And so he think about the gospel, he think about faith. Who break everything? Trump. Why? Because Trump destroy every type of relation. I believe the base of far right in Italy for sure could for sure in the next months will show how is deep this injury in the heart of the Christian world.
And Prime Minister, finally, what we've heard Pope Leo say, his criticism of the war in Iran, it's not rare for a pope to weigh in on foreign policy and geopolitics. We saw Pope Francis. He was very vocal when it came to immigration or climate change, the war in Gaza. We also, for years heard Pope John Paul be quite critical of certain foreign policy by global leaders.
But it's normal for a pope. This is the job of the pope, ask for peace. The job of the pope is ask for the peace, particularly in the Holy Land, but also in the other places. What do you expect from the pope who support and we bring the hat with Make America Great Again? That is crazy. It's so ridiculous. So it's normal, Holy Land and not only Holy Land, but of course every single theater of war is in the top of concerns for the Pope, every Pope. And I think try to use the Pope and put him in the political theater was an incredible mistake, and I'm sure in the midterm election in USA. But after that, in the French election in 2027, and the Italian election in 2027, in the Spain election in 2027, that mistake of Trump will have a lot of consequences. Please, not that. Meloni was not so strong to attack Trump, but far right in France, Madame Le Pen and Mr. Bardella, so the two leaders of far right in France, were the first to attack Trump for not only for that, because they understand very well if they continue to have a strong relation with Trump, we lose elections.
Former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme.
It's a pleasure.
Let's focus more on the US naval blockade of maritime traffic entering and leaving Iranian ports. Today, the president made clear that any Iranian ships near the blockade will be, in his words, eliminated. So how's it working and what impact is it having? Our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso can explain.
As of 3 p.m. UK time today, there are not one but two blockades of the Strait of Hormuz. One courtesy of Iran, whose threats against shipping have effectively closed the Gulf for 6 weeks, and now a US blockade, threatened at the weekend by Donald Trump and now clarified by US Central Command, which has said in a message to all shipping, any vessel entering or departing the blockaded area without authorization is subject to interception, diversion and capture. Now, it says this covers all Iranian ports, but not neutral vessels. In short, anybody doing business with Iran will be subject to US action, but those that don't won't. Now, it appears to be an attempt to neutralise the Iranian charging of tolls to vessels to secure safe passage and to prevent Iran exporting the oil on which it relies economically. Key question is, what will it do to traffic in the Strait of Hormuz? Well, this video shows us traffic in the 24 hours running up to today's deadline. You can see scores of tankers and cargo ships at anchor on either side of the strait. But if I speed this up a bit, see actually very little movement through the narrowest part of the strait itself. Some individual vessels are moving, but very, very few. And compared to the historic volumes started this year, this is oil and liquefied natural gas tankers, 50 to 60 a day before the Iranian-US war began, dropped down to single figures. Now, let's look at some of the individual vessels that might be targeted here. This is the Elpis, presumably the kind of tanker the US has in mind. It's sanctioned by the US. It loaded with oil up here on the Iranian coast on March the 31st. Now, we don't know where it's going, but it has been heading east all day, apparently unimpeded. It will be interesting to see if that remains the case. Now, some tankers are making their way through the strait without an obvious link to Iran. This is the New Future. It was in Hamraya in the UAE last week en route to Oman. Now, we don't know how or why it's managed to make this voyage, but this dotted line does tell us something. Its satellite tracking data has been turned off for part of the journey. And just one more to demonstrate the limbo that many vessels have been in for weeks. This is the Trimu 3. It's a liquefied petroleum gas tanker. It was making its way to Iran and was then turned round again with a period of its tracking switched off, and it's on its way back to Oman now. What we do know is that this kind of uncertainty is pushing up oil prices. After optimism in markets last week that the ceasefire might stick, we've now seen prices back up above $100 a barrel. And that is where they are likely to stay, with all the economic pain and uncertainty that brings around the world, until there is the genuine prospect of the free passage of shipping instead of escalating threats from the US and Iran.
Paul Kelso reporting there. Well, let's go straight to our David Blevins, who joins me live from Washington. And David, as ever, lots of news coming out of the White House today. The blockade coming into effect, which Donald Trump announced yesterday. And of course, no doubt that's a pressure tactic. And of course, that really strange press conference with the DoorDash grandma and various statements from Donald Trump about whether he thought that image was of him depicting himself as Jesus or not.
Very strange indeed, Yalda. The President had no scheduled engagements today, but at very short notice, journalists were asked to assemble outside the Oval Office. Cue the arrival of DoorDash Grandma. At least that's what it said on her red T-shirt. A woman arriving to deliver 2 bags full of McDonald's meals. Now, she was there because the White House wanted to change the narrative to talk about the fact that she has saved, they claim, $11,000 in tax as a result of the President's policies. But she then found herself in the rather unusual position, awkward perhaps, of standing right next to the US President while he staged this impromptu Q&A dealing with the world's geopolitical issues, most notably on Iran. He said that the Iranians had been in touch and very badly wanted to do a deal. He claimed their negotiators had not until now been willing to agree to not have a nuclear weapon, something they've agreed to many times. And on the blockade itself, well, he said he wouldn't allow Iran to blackmail or extort other countries who need the oil much more than the United States. But of course, he had already posted much of this on Truth Social earlier, claiming that any ship breaching the cordon would be, in his words, eliminated. But if we're going to attempt to analyse his strategy right now from a Truth Social post, I think it's important to point out that this is a president who posted 12 times on Truth Social between 9 o'clock last night and 9 o'clock this morning.
David, as always, thank you so much. Well, you're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. Israel and Hezbollah intensify strikes ahead of a face-to-face meeting between Lebanon and Israel tomorrow.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim. Welcome back to this special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim, live here in Beirut. And before we continue the rest of our news, I just want to show you these images of Beirut this evening, the skyline just behind me. And it's been relatively quiet over the past few days here in Beirut after that brutal attack on Wednesday. Across this city and this country, 100 strikes in just 10 minutes, which left 357 people dead. And of course, we have been covering those unfolding events in the south of the country. But here in Beirut, it has been relatively quiet in the last few days. Now, Hezbollah's chief, Naim Qassem, has delivered his first public address since the war began, calling on Lebanese leaders to cancel tomorrow's peace talks with Israel. The rare face-to-face meeting will take place in Washington in an attempt to end the fighting. But the outlook isn't bright. Israel says it won't discuss a ceasefire, while Hezbollah has objected to the negotiations all along. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford has been hearing from paramedics injured in Israeli strikes. Here's her report.
Emergency workers and paramedics are being killed at an astonishing rate in Lebanon. More than 2 a day have been killed in Israeli attacks in the last 6 weeks. Even so, we found them still working in the most dangerous part of the Lebanese capital right now, the southern suburbs of Beirut.
When it comes to the attacks, we're used to it. Maybe it's time for the international community and others to have some humanity. Our job is to rescue injured, help the people and remove the dead from under the rubble. That's it.
There's a lot of support for Hezbollah here. The group is seen as an armed resistance, and the emergency crews operating here are aligned with the group. Our presence here had to be agreed with Hezbollah officials.
Look at the size of this building and how much has been attacked. And this is large areas of the southern suburbs. Underneath, you can still see the boxes of what look like tea and cereal, lots of personal items all around. This is a very densely packed area, and all the time we've been here, there's been an Israeli drone overhead.
This used to be a young family's home. The father is a Lebanese army soldier. He wasn't there when the bombs began dropping. His little girl's colouring books are still there, along with her baby walker, her bracelets and hairbands. She was 4 years old and called Lamar, an angel to her family. When they found her body, she'd been decapitated. Her mother was killed with her. Their neighbours are absolutely against any negotiations with Israel.
We don't mind having more bloodshed if this will end in our victory. We can't have them killing our babies and then talk to them.
The Israeli military justifies its attacks on civilian areas and health workers by saying the militants are hiding in these homes and using ambulances for military purposes. And Hezbollah keeps firing rockets into Israeli civilian areas. Targeting non-combatants is a war crime. For Hezbollah parliamentarians, there are strict conditions before they'll agree to talks.
So I'd like to hear from you whether you believe Hezbollah disarmament would be the solution to this.
أمام هذه المجازر in this site and with these massacres, I think the first question now it is to stop the massacre of Israel in Lebanon. The stop of massacre Israel of Lebanon. Not another question now, it's the priority.
Hassan Badawi is the latest first responder to be killed in a targeted Israeli attack, bringing the number of emergency workers killed to 88 since early March. Hassan worked for the Lebanese Red Cross, part of the best-known humanitarian network in the world. But that wasn't enough to save him. The International Committee for the Red Cross said it was appalled at his killing and the injury of his colleague. Saving lives must never cost a life, the organisation said. Hours after the killing of the father of two, there was another Israeli drone attack, this time on a Lebanese Red Cross centre in Tyre in the south of the country. Several ambulances and emergency vehicles were destroyed or badly damaged. Nearly 200 emergency workers over the same period have been wounded in targeted Israeli strikes. Hassan Zenedine is one of them. He was hit and the ambulance damaged as his crew arrived at the site of another Israeli strike. Every time these crews go out, they're racing into danger.
Are you thinking this could be the last time I'm going out?
Yes, yes.
And what makes you carry on?
I tell you before that people want us to come. They want help. I cannot see any people want help, and I am sitting.
Look at this footage. This is what the emergency crews were walking into on the day they called Black Wednesday, when 100 strikes hit Beirut, Bekaa and the south in a matter of minutes. High-rise blocks collapsed, with dozens buried beneath, many killed instantly, many more screaming for help. A lot of them squashed into the tiniest of spaces as their living rooms and bedrooms collapsed around them. This was a rare event, a rescue in the most difficult of circumstances. The scene was a traumatic one, even for seasoned emergency crews.
The kids were buried under the building. Yeah, they were screaming. So I was asking myself, if we were much faster, could we save them? Could we save them? But unfortunately, we couldn't reach them. They are all dead. Yeah, this is really affects me. It's not a good scene. Yeah, each and every night I kept seeing those faces. I kept seeing those faces for their parents. It's 3 years old. What did he do? It's just a kid. So yeah, it's been 3 days without. I just keep thinking about that.
Ali has just found out another of his relatives has died this morning.
Here's my cousin. He's 15 years old. He was checking on his house. The minute he arrived at his house, an airstrike just bombed on him. And he was dead, but his father is still alive.
His colleagues tell us most of them are homeless, forced out through bombings or fear of them. And they're doing one of the most dangerous jobs in Lebanon right now. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Beirut.
Well, earlier I spoke to Tom Fletcher, the UN's Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. I began by asking his assessment of growing humanitarian crisis in Lebanon.
Well, it's grim, and I heard people despondent, despairing. Those numbers are going in the wrong direction. 1 million displaced, that's 1 in 5 people in the country. And remember that many of those people have been displaced many times. And those casualty numbers, remember that many of those were killed the day of the ceasefire. So for the people of Lebanon, this is grim, it's unrelenting, and I can understand why they're angry and frustrated and anxious.
Yeah, I mean, you make a point there because the Lebanese people are calling the situation here on Wednesday, that brutal attack by Israel, 100 strikes in just 10 minutes, which left 357 people killed. The IDF say they're targeting Hezbollah, but many civilians were also killed. We know, according to the health ministry, 99 women, 33 children. I mean, you know, the people here in this country thought they were waking up to a ceasefire, and instead it was a bombardment.
I mean, those figures are staggering, and as you'll know from being there, you know, you've got that relentless sound of the drones, you've got that constant fear about when the next attack is coming. And of course, so many of these attacks are in very, very heavily populated areas of southern Beirut. And so you have this climate of constant fear. And the health services are overwhelmed. I spend a lot of time with health workers. And of course, humanitarians and health workers themselves have been targeted in these attacks. And so it's deeply, deeply troubling.
Yeah, Tom, I want to ask more about humanitarians, health workers, ambulance workers who continue to be killed when they get to some of these sites or they're targeted. Just speak a little bit more about that, because the Lebanese authorities have told me that this is a breach of international law, it's a breach of humanitarian law. They've accused Israel of committing war crimes.
Well, let's be clear, any targeting of health workers and humanitarians is, of course, a breach of international law. I briefed the Security Council last week on the fact that in the last 3 years alone, we've lost over 1,000 humanitarians. You know, there's a climate of impunity and lawlessness around right now, but health workers should never, never be hit in these conflicts. I spent time with many of those health workers. They showed me the lack of protection that they have, the lack of physical protection, but more importantly, the lack of political protection that they feel as they're going out there to respond to these attacks and to try to save as many survivors as possible. They themselves are then being swept up in the crisis.
Tom, how does the international community ensure that international law is abided by and continued to be targeted in this way?
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, a few years ago, I wouldn't have thought I'd need to come on and do an interview and say that health workers shouldn't be hit, that civilians shouldn't be hit, that humanitarians should never be a target. And yet, in so many of the crises we're dealing with today, the opposite seems to be true. So you have this culture of lawlessness and impunity. So we as the United Nations, as the humanitarian sector, we will carry on speaking out for our courageous colleagues. But we need the member states, we need the Security Council to be much clearer in calling for full investigations, calling for accountability, and calling for an end of weapons going to people who are actually targeting us.
The other concern that the Lebanese authorities, the government ministers have expressed to me when I've spoken to them is they're concerned that Lebanon could turn into Gaza 2.0. Certainly we're seeing thousands of homes destroyed in the south of the country, parts of Beirut reduced to rubble in the ongoing bombing campaign and the airstrikes that we continue to see. Is that a concern of the UN?
It is a concern, and it has to be because we're hearing that rhetoric from the same Israeli ministers who threatened to turn Gaza into rubble. And we saw what happened to Gaza. I visited twice in the last year and a half. And so these are really chilling threats. And it's why you're seeing such huge levels of displacement, particularly from south of the Litani River. We're now finding it very, very difficult to get to those areas because 4 out of 5 of the key crossing points, the key bridges south of the Litani have also been destroyed. So, you know, these risks, these threats are real.
I just want to ask you about these talks that are going to take place in Washington in the next day or so between Israel and Lebanon. They're historic talks, and the aim is to come to some kind of resolution, some kind of deal, some kind of ceasefire. But if that doesn't go anywhere, what is your concern for Lebanon and this ongoing humanitarian crisis that we are seeing unfolding?
Well, look, I know expectations are low, but these are historic talks. And it was unthinkable a few years ago that Lebanon and Israel would be having these direct contacts. And so we all have to hope that they succeed. We all have to hope for an end to this escalation and a sustainable, permanent ceasefire for the communities in northern Israel that are coming under this indiscriminate attack from Hezbollah rockets, and for these communities in southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley and the southern suburbs of Beirut who are dying in such high numbers. So we've all got to get behind those talks. And, you know, the Lebanese president, the Lebanese leadership, the prime minister reminded me when I was in Beirut of quite what a big deal it is for them to have reached out in this way and sought dialogue. Let's hope they succeed. If they fail, then I have grave, grave fears for Lebanon, I worry about more civilian deaths. I worry about the risk of further political tension and further displacement. So we have to get right behind those talks.
The UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, speaking to me earlier. And I'd just like to clarify that in an interview with Israel's permanent representative to the UN, Danny Danon, last Friday, I said 357 civilians were killed in Israel's strikes across Lebanon on Wednesday. It is, in fact, 357 people who were killed. The Lebanese Health Ministry doesn't differentiate between combatants and non-combatants in its figures, but say 99 women and 33 children were amongst those killed. The IDF says it is targeting Hezbollah. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, making moves, how this Hungarian politician's victory dance went viral after Viktor Orban's defeat.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
The newly elected Hungarian Prime Minister Peter Magyar has laid out a clear shift away from Russian allegiance in his first speech after ousting President Putin's ally Viktor Orban. He said Russia poses a security risk and put his support behind the EU in a speech that'll be well received by European leaders. Our correspondent Ivor Bennett reports.
The shackles are off and they're dancing to a different tune. This viral video of Hungary's expected new health minister encapsulating the party mood. The country's new direction was outlined by the man who'll be its new leader.
Exactly 23 years to the day after the referendum on our accession to the EU, the Hungarian people reaffirmed Hungary's place in Europe and in the European Union.
Compared to his rival, it is a complete reversal. Viktor Orban was the EU's serial disruptor. No wonder his departure is being celebrated in Brussels.
The people of Hungary have spoken and they have reclaimed their European path. It is a victory for fundamental freedoms.
One place they're not celebrating in is Moscow. Viktor Orban was a key ally of Vladimir Putin's. He'd block sanctions on Russia and oppose aid to Ukraine. The Kremlin said it would respect the election result, but would not congratulate the winner.
What will your relationship be like with Vladimir Putin? Will you speak to him? And if so, what will you say?
If Vladimir Putin calls, I will pick up the phone. I won't be calling him myself, but if we were to speak, I would ask him to stop the massacre and to stop the pointless war. I was glad when the Kremlin spokesman said today that they will respect the outcome of the Hungarian elections, that they understand that the new government and I are open to having a pragmatic relationship. I can confirm this.
Hello, Mr. President. How are you?
But no word from the Trump administration 24 hours in. It publicly backed Viktor Orban for re-election.
And I love that, Viktor.
It's lost an ideological ally.
But what Donald Trump thinks and what Vladimir Putin thinks doesn't matter to the majority of Hungarians. They voted firmly to be part of Europe again, and they feel like they've reclaimed their freedom and their future.
That means it's hope for Hungarians, for a better life, the justice, better healthcare system, better education, hope for them, the future.
We have always had this sense of belonging to the West instead of the East. So we had bad experience with Russia and the East in the past.
And now, change is in the air. It's a feeling many want to hold on to. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Budapest.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim, next up on the programme. More on tomorrow's talks between Lebanon, Israel and the United States.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We've just entered Gaza. The vista out there is complete destruction. I'll always remember going into Gaza City during the war. All around us was destruction and the sounds of battle. I witnessed the scars of the October the 7th attacks, burnt out homes, bullet holes in walls and bloodstains on the floor.
People were murdered, people were kidnapped.
The Israelis insist that many of these prisoners are terrorists, but here the Palestinians consider them a blend of freedom fighters and political prisoners. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw two guys, two bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing.
I suppose it is what we do.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Let's return our focus to those talks between Lebanese, Israeli and US officials in Washington that's taking place tomorrow. I just want to bring in Sami Nader, a Lebanese political analyst. Sami, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. I mean, it has been an incredibly dark week. It's been a dark 6 weeks, but the Wednesday attack was just horrifying. And the Lebanese authorities that I've been speaking to say, how can we negotiate or come up with any kind of deal under bombardment? I just want to get your assessment on these talks that are going to take place tomorrow.
I mean, first of all, the talks, this is, an unprecedented step. This is the first time since long the Lebanese and the Israelis can sit around the same table. What's important in these talks is the decoupling between the Lebanese track and the Iranian track. And this is important for Lebanon. And the initiative was launched by the Lebanese president. He wants to open direct talk with Israel because this is the only way to stop the bloodshed. And so it was surprising that the Israelis, for their own calculation, accepted these talks.
Was it pressure from Washington, do you think, that forced them to do this?
I think that they had interest in, as well, in decoupling the Lebanese track from the Iranian one, not to allow Iran using the Lebanese card as a chip on the negotiation table. So, but is Israel interested in peace, as it is saying? And still we have a major problem. Will Hezbollah accept any outcome of this talks between Lebanon and Israel? This is different. But all in all, this process will take time.
We heard from Naim Qassem today, the leader of Hezbollah, and he was calling on the government, quite critical of the government, saying don't go into these talks with Israel.
They want, although they support the talks Iran is holding with the United States. So why is it it's allowed for the Iranian to talk directly with the Grand Satan and the Lebanese is not allowed to talk to the Little Satan? And this is not well received by a big majority of the Lebanese people. I mean, we have tried the war. The war didn't achieve anything except destruction, displacement, death, and all this blood. And the only way to get Lebanon rid of this very dark situation is to negotiate.
And accept
is always better than suicide.
But and accept some of the conditions that Israel is putting on the table, demilitarizing Hezbollah, for example.
This is a very important
difficult.
point. Demilitarizing Hezbollah is a Lebanese demand. This is something we have agreed upon since the Taif Accord in 1989. So we are 40 years late in implementing this. And recently, the Lebanese government has taken the decision on August 5 to exert the monopoly of arms all over its territory. On March 2nd, also, the Lebanese government has declared Hezbollah outlaw. as a military organization. So today, what's required from Lebanon is to implement its own decision. Disarming Hezbollah before being an Israeli demand, it's something that is required by a sovereign state to exert the monopoly of arms all over its territory.
I have a minute to go, Sami, but is the Lebanese government capable of doing that, taking on Hezbollah as well?
Maybe not. Maybe not. This is why, if the Lebanese government is not has no capability to do it, he needs to ask the international help, the Arab help, and given the situation today in the region, I think he will get the help he needs. So the problem, does the Lebanese army, the Lebanese authority have the will or have the capability? And this is, I mean, if they have the will, the capability will come.
Sami Nader, really good to talk to you and get your thoughts and analysis. Thank you so much for joining us. So huge issues on the table for Lebanon, for Israel, as they begin these historic face-to-face negotiations in Washington tomorrow. Of course, we will be following all the coverage. And as Sami was saying there, it was important for Lebanon to separate itself, a separate track from the talks that are taking place between the United States and Iran. We'll continue our coverage throughout the day tomorrow as well. But for now, good night.